Good evening. Welcome to our annual Visiting Scholar public lecture. Bose is so disappointed to not be here tonight, welcoming you, but unfortunately he's been drawn away from school for a few days to address family matters. In his place, I'd like to begin this evening's program by inviting you to join me in taking a deep breath in and then exhaling into a shared moment of silence. Thank you. The Friends Seminary Visiting Scholar Program is in its 7th year and is made possible by a generous gift to the school. The goal of the program is to expose students to individuals who are thought leaders in their field, whom they might not otherwise interact with directly. We've had scientists, journalists, architects, and now we can add Quaker luminary to the list. We're incredibly lucky to have Arthur here with us on campus this week. Arthur's impact in the Quaker school world has been extensive. Through continued sharing of wisdom, his work as a Quaker leader has helped many school communities to become better versions of themselves. Arthur is a lifelong Quaker. He is trained as a lawyer and practiced law in Philadelphia for 23 years. After leaving the practice of law, Arthur took a leadership role in the Society of Friends by becoming the General Secretary of Philadelphia Yearly Meeting, a regional association of 103 Quaker meetings extending over 4 states. Arthur has also served as presiding clerk of the Philadelphia Yearly Meeting and clerk of the Board of Trustees of Westtown School. At present, Arthur's work and ministry is teaching and consulting about Quaker decision-making. Although she could not be here tonight, Elizabeth Enlow, co-clerk of our school committee, had this to share about Arthur's current work. This calling of his has had no small part in undergirding over the years the best of Quaker decision-making processes within the broader society. The seeking and finding of unity, the essence of listening and discernment. I doubt he would claim this for himself, but the hundreds of folk who have benefited from time with Arthur so in turn benefit the Society of Friends. Arthur is best known amongst this school's faculty and staff for his workshop offered through the Friends Council on Education. The core premise of that workshop, that there is a spiritual energy in the world that can help guide the affairs of institutions, has been a guiding principle for many of us as we collaborate daily on this never-ending project called school. I took Arthur's workshop 3 years ago and left with tools and perspectives that I draw upon every day in my work. Arthur is now close, so close, to completing 2 of his 3 extremely full days on our campus. Already, he has led 4 clerking workshops for more than 20 faculty and 70 students. He has visited 12th grade history classes where he participated in conversations on the connection of Quakerism to social justice and the social constructs of feminism. He has visited with 7th graders to discuss the nature of civil discourse in this election season, and late just this afternoon, he was interviewed by a 4th grade class on what it means to be a Quaker. He's joined us in meeting for worship and availed himself generously in numerous chance encounters in the hallways and lunchroom. It has been a great pleasure for me to spend time with Arthur these last few days. His clarity of spirit and perception is refreshing. I hope you will find the same as we enjoy his remarks this evening. Please join me in welcoming Arthur Larrabee.
Thank you, Will, for that generous introduction. For some Quakers, Quaker luminary would be an oxymoron. But I understand the goodwill and good intentions. Thank you, friends, for this opportunity to be with you this evening. And I want to say a special thank you to Bo Lauder, head of school, for his invitation to be this year's visiting lecturer, visiting scholar. As Will has said, I'm in the middle of a 3-day visit, and it's been affording me a wonderful opportunity to connect with and to be nurtured by this extraordinary Friends School community. A community which seeks to prepare students to engage with the world that is and to help bring about a world that ought to be. I am told that I was invited to be this year's visiting scholar because the school has wanted to celebrate and to affirm its Quaker identity. I am so glad to have been a part of this work. The Visiting Scholar program asks that the scholar present a public lecture, as Will has said, in which he or she offers something of their own experience. And that is my plan this evening. The experience of Quakers, Quaker principles and practices go to the heart of a Friends School. They are foundational to what a Friends School is all about. And what I want to do this evening is to shed some light on just a few of these principles by sharing with you stories from my own life. The experiences from which I will draw have taken place outside of a Friends School, but the principles are fundamentally the same. My hope is to communicate some of the texture and flavor of the Quaker experience that illuminates the character of a Friends School. I have called my talk Illuminating the Quaker Heart of a Friends School, Stories from a Quaker Life. I expect that my talk will take about 50 minutes. I have a question. I wonder if anyone here is quietly thinking, you know, I really don't care whether or not Friends Seminary is a Quaker school. It's a great school. It will prepare me, or if I am a parent, my child, to get into the most desirable colleges possible. So why sweat the Quaker stuff? I have a story. I served as trustee of Westtown School, another Quaker school located in the Philadelphia area, for a total of 29 years. Sometimes I hardly feel that old, to say nothing of having been a trustee for that length of time. One day, it must have been 15 or more years ago, I was walking with another trustee on the school campus. In the middle of a very long weekend board meeting, my trustee friend, who is not a Quaker and had 3 sons, attend Westtown with satisfactory experiences. I don't know how we got to talking about Westtown as a Quaker school, but in the course of our conversation, my friend said to me, "You know, Arthur, I really don't care whether Westtown is a Quaker school." I was deeply startled. For me, it is of the very essence of Westtown that it is a Quaker school. Being a Quaker school is part of its DNA. It is an essential element that distinguishes it from other independent schools. Being Quaker goes to the heart of what Westtown is about and what it aspires to be. After my friend spoke, I was at a loss for words. I wanted to stand up for Westtown as a Quaker school, but in the moment, I wasn't sure what I might say that would be helpful. "I hear you," I said to my friend, And I accept the fact that any one of us may not care that Westtown is a Quaker school. But for me, there is more. It seems to me, regardless of what any one of us may think individually, that each of us must respect the fact that the school cares. The school cares that it is a Quaker school, and we who are its trustees must honor and respect the fact that it cares, regardless of what any one of us may think personally. For those of us who belong to the Friends Seminary community, in whatever role we find ourselves, it seems to me beside the point to say, I don't care whether or not Friends Seminary is a Quaker school. We may not care personally, but the school cares. And the way we can support the school is to help the school live out its Quaker identity, mission, and vision. Tonight, I want to consider 4 aspects among many of the Quaker heart of a Friends school. What I have in mind are, first, an appreciation for the spiritual dimension of life. Second, the central place of the meeting for worship. Third, the testimony of integrity. And fourth, spirit-led decision-making. As I said a minute ago, I have some stories from my life as a Quaker which illuminate what I'm talking about, although the stories do not take place in a school setting. And at the end of each of 4 sections, I will have a query to stimulate further reflection. The first aspect of the heart of a Friends school that I want to consider is an appreciation for the spiritual dimension of life. At the heart of Quakerism is the belief that there is a spiritual dimension to life which is worth paying attention to. It is the experience of Quakers that when we open ourselves to it, Spirit can deepen and enrich our lives, lead us into desirable outcomes, make us better human beings, and make the world a better place. In a Friends school, this spiritual dimension is not defined by what I would call traditional mainstream religious thinking or traditional religious silos. It is non-sectarian. It is non-denominational. It is non-creedal. It is non-dogmatic. It doesn't proselytize. It welcomes everyone and excludes no one. For Quakers, an aspect of this spiritual dimension is a living, dynamic, spiritual presence that is both within us and outside of us. Quakers call this spiritual presence by different names. 3 of the names we often use are Spirit, Inner Light, and God. These 3 names are found in Friends Seminary's own faith and practice. Tonight I will most often use the terms spiritual energy and spirit. I have a story. It is a story about how this spiritual energy has worked in my own life and how it has given me direction. I went to law school for 3 reasons. First, I didn't know what else to do. Second, I had some vague notion about acquiring skills to do good in the world. And third, perhaps the most important for me at the time, I did not want to risk being poor like my family of origin. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Law School in 1970 and practiced law in Philadelphia for 23 years. It was characteristic of my law career that I did well, but all along, I knew deep within me that it wasn't my métier, my deepest calling. Early on in my law practice, sometime between years 5 and 10, I began to imagine another career, something like teaching or the ministry. As these ideas began to take root, I found myself consciously opening to a larger spiritual energy and inviting that energy into my life to guide me and to help make right decisions. There's a story from early Quaker history that was very important to me in the process of my opening to this larger spiritual energy. George Fox was the principal founder of Quakerism in the 1600s, and William Penn, who later became the proprietor of what we now know as the state of Pennsylvania, was an early follower of his. George Fox was preaching non-participation in war and the nonviolent resolution of conflict, and William Penn wore a sword as a member of the court of Charles II, King of England. One day, William Penn asked George Fox, "If I am to be a follower of yours, when must I take off my sword?" And George Fox said, "William Penn, wear your sword as long as you can. Wear your sword as long as you can." In other words, don't take off your sword because I told you so. Don't take off your sword because you want to be a follower of mine. Don't take off your sword out of youthful enthusiasm or for intellectual reasons. No, wait. Wait until you have an inward experience of a spiritual energy, something from within in you that impels you to take it off. That's what's required to be faithful to the promptings of the Spirit and faithful to one's own conscience. A third story. In my senior year in high school, I was admitted to Yale. But Yale did not award me any financial aid. My family could not afford the last $500 out of a total of $2,800. Tuition, room and board, $2,800. That summer, I worked as a camp counselor, and when I got home in late August, the money to bridge the gap had not materialized. It looked like I was not going to Yale. Father was not daunted, but rather seemed to be in touch with some inner knowing. "Arthur," he said, "I have faith that it's right for you to go to Yale and that way will open if you just get up to New Haven and move in. I think we should get in the car and go. Tomorrow you can make an appointment with the bursar and they will find a way for you to stay." I was scared to death, but that's exactly what we did. The next day I saw the bursar. "Mr. Larrabee," he said, "of course we can find a way for you to stay. Not to worry, this is what we'll do." Chutzpah, integrity. Quakers have a saying that goes like this: Live up to the light you have, and more will be granted to you. In other words, don't hesitate to get going because you don't know how the journey will end, but take the first step and the next step and proceed with the light you have until you reach your destination, or the light is no longer available. The concept of integrity is at the Quaker heart of a Friends school. Another query. In your life, both at Friends Seminary and outside of Friends Seminary, where are you most challenged to live with integrity? And in these challenging situations, where do you get support for making the choices that you recognize to be right ones? The fourth and final aspect of the Quaker heart of our Friends School about which I'd like to say something has to do with Quaker decision-making. The school's Faith and Practice says something about this. It acknowledges that Quaker decision-making can be challenging in a hierarchical school community, but it also notes, at Friends Seminary, we work to preserve the spirit of Quaker process and to create trust, which is crucial for all decision-making. I have been told that within the Friends Seminary community there have been some challenging decision-making experiences in the recent and not so recent past, and that Quaker decision-making process has been seen by some as one of the reasons. At this time, I do not propose to revisit or to analyze specific decisions or the decision-making process. But what I'd like to do is to take a look at the spirit of Quaker decision-making, which underlies the process. Quaker decision-making is a sense of the meeting process. It is not a voting process. It is not a consensus process. Rather, it is a non-voting process that uses the movement and direction of the spiritual energy of a meeting as the basis for forming a decision with which those present can unite. So, what is this spiritual energy? This is how I think about it. It is an energy which respects that of God in each person in the room. It is an energy which connects us. It is an energy which seeks the highest good. It is an energy that seeks to be aligned with what we know of spiritual truth. It is an energy that would feel at home in a Quaker meeting for worship. In Quaker decision-making, what we seek is a sense of the meeting that contains within it a decision. A sense of the meeting is a statement which focuses on the big picture. It focuses on the big picture and lifts each of us out of our own individual myopias. I have a story. When my wife Nancy and I were celebrating our first Christmas together, we got a Christmas tree. I have always loved Christmas, and I invest a large energy into decorating the tree. After Christmas, it was clearly my job to dismantle the tree. But Nancy and I had a conflict. I could see no reason why the tree could not stay up until sometime in the middle of January. It was very pretty, and I had invested so much energy in it. Nancy, on the other hand, felt equally strongly that the tree should come down before New Year's so that the house could be cleaned before she went back to work. We spent most of an afternoon fussing at each other, each of us being upset with the other's intractability. In retrospect, it's hard to imagine how we ever got so mired down. Finally, being weary of our impasse, it occurred to me to ask, Nancy, what do you think is the sense of our relationship? Both Nancy and I have Quaker backgrounds, and so comparing our relationship process to a Quaker sense of the meeting process was an easy analogy. What do you think is the sense of the relationship? Nancy said, with a little incredulity, okay, Arthur, why don't you tell me what you think the sense of the relationship is? Okay, I said. My sense of the relationship, sweetie, is that the tree should come down by New Year's. What do you think? So what happened for me? I didn't feel that I had lost the argument. I didn't feel that I had surrendered or capitulated. I actually felt pretty good about my articulation of a sense of the relationship. But why? Wasn't it just the opposite of what I had been arguing for all afternoon, what I wanted? What happened for me is this, and this is what can happen in a Quaker sense of the meeting process. Articulating a sense of the relationship required me to refocus. It refocused me away from what I wanted, what I had been arguing for all afternoon, and refocused me on the bigger picture. It was no longer about what do I want and why can't I have it, but what is the bigger picture? What does the relationship, oh, I had this so perfectly. What does the relationship need? Wow. As soon as the question became, what does the relationship need, and not, what do I want, I could see the whole situation differently. It was clear for me that the relationship needed for the tree to come down by New Year's. What do I want? And what is the sense of the relationship are two different questions that can lead to two different responses. This process is part of the spirit of Quaker decision-making, and it is at the Quaker heart of a Friends School. I have a query. How can we make a difference in the life of the Friends Seminary community by refocusing our attention away from what do I want to asking what do we need? What is the bigger picture? I have come near to the end of my talk. This evening, I have wanted to illuminate four aspects of what I think of as the Quaker heart of a Friends School. Appreciation for the spiritual dimension of life, the central place of the meeting for worship, the testimony of integrity, and spirit-led decision-making. A Friends School does not ask anyone, regardless of his or her role, to be a Quaker, or to believe or think or act like a Quaker, or even care that it is a Quaker school. A Friends School, however, does care. A Friends School does care that it is a Quaker school. And a Friends School asks that the community and all of those in its orbit respect that the school cares and act in ways that support and nurture and strengthen its Quaker identity. Yes, a Quaker school will help its students get into the colleges of their choice. But it will also help to lay the foundation for a moral and ethical life and help its students to cultivate an appreciation for the spiritual dimensions of life, which are deeper and higher and ultimately more meaningful than material or temporal success. The Quaker principles and practices I've talked about tonight influence the life of the school, in its classrooms, in its administration, and in its governance. They are at the Quaker heart of the school. And once we begin to appreciate that the Quaker heart is an essential component of what makes Friends Seminary a great school, we may also find ourselves really caring that our Friends School is also a Quaker school. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for attending, and have a great night.